Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. Anyway, this video is about coronavirus and the upcoming US election. We got 6 months to go, almost to the day. Opinion polls show that Joe Biden is 9 months ahead, 9 points ahead, forgive me. Now, anyone who's viewed this channel will know that I absolutely hate, loathe and abominate Donald J. Trump. It's hard to think of anyone, and I really mean anyone, in American politics who'd be worse. I mean, Ted Cruz, for example, is utterly despicable, but he's not stupid, and he's not always dishonest, and he's not said that he wants to commit sexual assaults on women and blah, blah, blah. We've got a few virtues, bit more predictable, and so on, or even a scumbag like Mitch McConnell. It doesn't prove that Biden's going to win. Anything can happen at backgammon. In elections, it's not all over till it's over. Hillary Clinton, she was about, 4 percentage points ahead, outside the margin of error. So they thought she did win by 2 percentage points in the popular vote, but obviously that wasn't enough to get to the Electoral College. Partly it was how inefficiently distributed it was. So Joe Biden is particularly ahead amongst women. Now, Trump is slightly ahead amongst men, 2 percentage points ahead amongst men. So coronavirus has killed over 70,000 Americans. Do you remember it was a hoax, according to Trump, in February, as in it did not exist, that there was no coronavirus? Well over 1 million cases later, perhaps Trump has changed his mind on that one. Okay, he always talks about coronavirus. Yes, it does admit it does exist. There are lies he's told incessantly for years, which he subsequently changed his mind about, saying that Barack Obama was born in the United States, having for several years spun out this fallacious statement that he was not born in the United States, that Obama was not an American, and so on. With clear racist undertones to that one. Somehow African Americans don't count, are not American, and so forth. So just because Obama, his father was from abroad, I mean, Trump's mother was from overseas. So coronavirus is particularly killing ethnic minorities, which is maybe why Trump is blasé about it, because very few African Americans vote for the Republicans, not many Asians. The Asians are quite a small minority, and most Latinos vote for the Democrats. So does Trump like it in any way? It discriminates on a socioeconomic basis, so it seems to me, because some of these people wouldn't have access to good health care, wouldn't be able to go and get treated in time, get tested in time, and all the rest of it, might be doing blue-collar jobs, which they might still have to do. Some white-collar people like me, I can work from home, be out of danger. Some jobs you can't do from home. And obviously he does better amongst blue-collar workers. He does better amongst the less well-educated. I wonder why. Anyway, so how has he handled this? Remember, it was going to go away in April. There would be no more coronavirus, like none. Or the other one, by the 12th of March, it would not exist, be close to zero. Close to zero. Remember that one? How about try like over 1 million infections? How close to zero was that? It's closer to 2 million than it is to zero. So remember his rambling press conferences, treating you to a raw maish every time, and he has got no good news, just getting one word, riffing on it, spewing out absolute twaddle, speculating on all these things. Would it be a good idea to inject disinfectant into the lungs? If you've got nothing helpful to say nothing. What you should do is obviously have a message, ensure there's clarity, and endlessly repeat that. Stay at home. Self-isolate if you have symptoms, wash your hands for 20 seconds, get a lather going. That's what kills it on your hands. And I hadn't realized that. Why the 20 seconds? That just means to be thorough. But if they explain the reason, no, that kills the virus on your hands, then I would be much more persuaded to do it sooner. Anyway, disinfect it on your hands, things like that, or sort of alcoholic hand wash, things like that. Not that you are an alcoholic, but you know what I mean. Something based on alcohol. And just let the experts speak. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to be the center of the attention all the time, Donald. And especially if you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, when it comes to coronavirus, I don't really either. But I don't speak about the science of it for hours. I know my limitations. Isn't it the very beginning of wisdom to understand your shortcomings? You've got to be aware of what you're bad at. Okay, and play to your strengths. So Trump, if it was spinning out fallacies, well, that is a real gift of his. If it's telling flagrant lies almost non-stop and getting a lot of people to believe him, well, that is a rare talent he's got there. If ripping people off makes other people like him, if being terrible for the working class makes working class people want to vote for him, I mean, wow, I take my hat off to him for that one. And telling yet more blatant lies. We had no ventilators when this started. No ventilators. Do you know what no means? Well, he doesn't know what no means if a woman says it anyway. Yes, of course there were ventilators in the United States. I don't know the exact number. Have they got a few more? But he didn't even make these companies produce them under that Defense Production Act. He said, well, I invoked it, but he didn't actually say they had to do it. And on, and bidding against states and driving up the price and aggravating the situation again and again. Remember, he had it under control. Remember that? Repeatedly insured all through January, all through February, into early March. It was under control. Yeah, so lie after lie after lie, blatantly told. Or a bit like going back to another issue about that Mexican wall, when he said Mexico isn't even going to pay 2 cents for the wall. Well, Donald, wow, can the devil speak true? Even Trump tells the truth occasionally, after lying and lying and lying for years, knowing full well that Mexico would never pay a brass farthing for that wall, as they repeatedly said, and why on earth should they? I mean, I'm being flippant now. I think maybe the Mexicans might want to build a wall to keep Americans out in the coronavirus, because the situation's far worse in the United States than it is in Mexico. So over 70,000 Americans dead, and he's just still shrugging off as though this is a good result. He said it would be anything from 100,000 to 200,000. When it passes 100,000, he'll start saying, oh, well, that's, he'll start saying the figures are false. So if it goes over 100,000, that's not the best case scenario for him. Will it go over 200,000? I'm afraid to think it will. I think it'll go closer to 600,000 by the time the next president is inaugurated, or indeed he's re-inaugurated on the 20th of January. Yeah, what a great result. He's boasting about how magnificent his handling this has been. And so you get to reopen the economy. If that's such a good thing, do it. Do it. You have the courage of your convictions then. I don't think he should do it. And he obviously can't completely make things happen, claiming his authority is total. It's not total. Have you heard of the Constitution? It's limited. And remember, Republicans, where were you when you were saying, oh, Obama's a dictator, he uses executive orders too much? He did use them quite a bit. Was it too much? Maybe. Trump definitely uses them a lot, but I didn't hear Republicans criticizing about that. States' rights, Republicans are supposed to care about that. But what Trump can control is the federal government. He could reopen all federal government offices. He could have his army parades to his heart's content. He's the commander-in-chief. A lot of them would get coronavirus. He didn't tackle it when it was in a U.S. Navy ship. So he's not done what he said he would do on reopening the economy. He's given aid and comfort to these morons who are saying liberate the states, as in end the lockdown. So he's abetted them, at least morally, but not actually gone the whole hog. So they should think he's a wuss for not actually backing them to the hilt. He's vacillated. I don't know, sometimes it's right to be in the middle, but he contradicts himself all the time. Not following his own advice, not leading by example, not wearing a mask. I haven't seen him shake hands, at least on that one. And you could have like nobody in the press conference, or just one person to speak directly to telly to avoid any crowding, have social distancing. Make sure they're all tested before they're in his presence. Lying, saying that everybody who wants to get tested can get tested. There weren't enough test kits. These things cost typically $4,000. Most Americans can't afford that. What if the federal government picked up the bill? That would help a lot. So people would get tested. They could be able to isolate if they got it, be able to get treatment much sooner if they had it. And everybody knows a stitch in time saves 9. The earlier you get diagnosed with things, the better your chance are of beating it. Even though the federal government's not going to pay for the treatment, people at least know whether they need to get treated or not, instead of the worried well clogging up hospitals and those who desperately need it just going when they're beyond medical help. So the US is heading for another Great Depression. Is it 30 million unemployed? 30 million? And even when coronavirus is over, even when the first day comes as not a single infection, that doesn't mean the economy is going to bounce back like that, does it? So mass unemployment, dragging the economy down, underconsumption, downward spiral, which reminds us just how the country's really jeopardized itself by basing itself on rampant consumerism. Not that some people have too much, some people don't have enough. And it can be handled much better, like New Zealand, South Korea, Singapore. They've shown far better ways to do it. Now, I know Singapore and New Zealand have very small populations, 4 million and then 5 million people. South Korea's population is substantial, 50 million. I know the US is like the third biggest population in the world, quite a big territory. Having such a big landmass might actually help, because the population is so diffuse. And the Republic of Korea had their first case diagnosed the same day as the United States, and see just how different their trajectory has been. With rational policies, firmly implemented, if you all the government officials singing for the same hymn sheet, a proper stratagem there, like the Obama administration was trying to tell them to come up with in case something like this happened, it could have been a much, much better outcome. Even I could have been impressed with Trump if he'd been willing to follow the expert advice. But oh no, that was far too logical. He had to go his own way and stick his head in the sand, thereby exposing his thinking parts, claiming it didn't exist, cheerily ignoring unwelcome data. The truth, we don't need to ignore, we don't need to believe that, we'll ignore it. The war on truth, that is what the Trump movement is all about. So the United States has got one of the highest per capita death rates from coronavirus. I mean, so if you look at the number of deaths per million Americans, United Kingdom is very bad as well, about the 4th highest. Republic of Ireland fairly bad, was something like 15th highest. That's a really dreadful result. If America really is the greatest, think of all the money it has, so many superb hospitals and doctors, how incredibly difficult it is to qualify as a doctor and nurse. Consider they're the best paid in the world. Can you think of a country where doctors and nurses are higher paid than the United States? If you can, I'd like to know, out of all 193 countries in the world. But the trouble with paying them such enormously high salaries is then it makes their services very, very expensive to hire. So people can't afford time with doctors and nurses very much. There's maldistribution. It's distributed through the price mechanism and not on the basis of medical need. So he thinks he could lie his way out of this. Well, lying is not going to make it go away. And he chose GDP and the stock market as barometers of his success. And of course, those figures are not going to be looking good. Now he can say, oh, it's all coronavirus. Well, it is partly coronavirus. Every country is going to suffer this year, but some of them are going to suffer hugely more than others. China's reopened its economy. New Zealand is unable to do that already. They have done it. The only thing is they're not allowing flights in and out. They might allow them from Australia. That's it. So loads of countries who took the medicine, took firm measures quickly, and they implemented them firmly. They were able to reopen much sooner, and the economic damage was much less because they bit the bullet. But if you faff around, locking down, reopening prematurely, is going to last far longer. The economic damage is going to be much greater. So you have to do it boldly. Grasp the nettle. So anyway, the polls tend to tighten towards election time, and Biden had a rational strategy on this. He's not talking too much. Only say something if you've got something worthwhile to say. Allow Trump to foul his own nest. Okay, if you don't intervene all the time, Trump is being given enough rope to hang himself with by screwing up this crisis just so badly. He might well get some of his sympathetic governors to reopen the economy. He might reopen the federal government. He wasn't so keen when he managed to end it due to cutting off funding in early 2019, and then it'll spread like wildfire. And the experts say coronavirus is likely to reattack in the autumn anyway. That's the fall if you're American. But if you reopen the economy too early, well, it's going to be even worse. It'll never go down. And more people are ill in winter, obviously autumn leading into winter. And remember, it's those with respiratory conditions are much more vulnerable because it kills you through the lungs. Any pulmonary condition like pneumonia or emphysema, severe cases of asthma, pleurisy, things like that, people who are immunocompromised, already suffering serious other diseases, elderly people, I suppose homeless people because they're just in a generally debilitated state of health. So if you're run down or if you're a smoker, something like that, in those cases you're a very high risk sort of person, an alcoholic, a drug addict. So it's not looking pretty for Trump or for America generally, and he's maybe hoping it discriminates and kills only Democratic voters. I'm not sure that's true. Because it disproportionately kills the elderly, they tend to be Trump supporters. So he might be killing more of his supporters than not, especially if he urges them to go to rallies if it's and so forth. So that is Trump and the coronavirus. I mean, I'll give Trump a 40% chance of being re-elected in November. I mean, it's staggering. He's got so much support. His support initially went up when this came, then it dipped. It started going up again. Just don't understand it, the way he screwed it up so badly. But this leads me to question some of the assumptions which underpin democracy. The idea that people are rational actors, that they have their self-interest at heart, that they study the evidence and they arrive at a conclusion based on that. There's so much as about emoting. Everyone's a bit emotional. Hey, I am too. That's to be flesh and blood. But it never ceases to flabbergast me just how utterly irrational some people are, how they will vote against their own interest and really can't see that. He's good for some super rich people who have their taxes cut. He's good for almost nobody else in the United States. Well, please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and book online lessons with me in history, politics, religious studies, English, geography, English as a foreign language, French, and law. Choose me as your tour guide in London, and I translate from French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, German, and Russian, and let me help you with a thesis or dissertation. Toodaloo.